Hi everyone, welcome to the Yurugu book study of chapter 5, Image of Others, covering the last bit. I just want to start, we're all going to start with the summaries. Does anyone want to go first with the summary of what we covered?
Yeah, I keep my summary short. So the biggest takeaway is Europeans, aka white people, have no sense of self unless they can directly connect that sense of self in relation to other people, such as non-whites, people who've been classified as Africans, classified as Indians or Tawnies, I guess. So these people, Europeans, they see themselves in relation to power and control. Whatever they are interacting with, two things are to be kept in mind: how they are perceiving the other and how they perceive themselves. They see themselves as superior, and they see non-whites as inferior. That is for every single European. That is for racist man, racist woman, and racist child. So and this I love this the ending of chapter 5 because it's just so to the point and there's so much research that's done for us, so we get to read from the serpent's mouth how truly superior they are to me, you know. So it was great, you know, reminding me of my positionality, where I should be, in regards to the European.
Popcorn, someone trade.
Popcorn Mary.
So, opening thoughts, is the question is opening thoughts or what drew out the most?
Summary.
Oh, okay. To summarize, this chapter just helped further enlighten me on the mentality of the what we actually are experiencing today in society, the society morals of. I have an understanding of why people say kindness is weakness, because to be kind is given an advantage point for people to take advantage. And that is only on the basis that kindness is only weakness in a space where people use, where the European Asili is applied, where manipulation or being able to control somebody through their sensitivity or being able to control somebody through aggression as a way of power. If it was an environment where that wasn't the case, kindness would be power. But it just made sense as to why things that we see as weakness, being a woman, being sensitive, being in touch with highly strong in your emotions, is not practical or is seen as a negative in an environment that views how their relationship with others, that views their self-existence in relation to how they can control other people and other races. So that was my understanding. It just helped me understand that more say.
You popcorn somebody?
I like to popcorn Sarah.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I totally agree with Trey that I really like the ending of this. Like the summary is so concise and like a really striking way, I think, to like think about so many of the views that we see in society today, like why European philosophy thinks of themselves this way and like everybody else a different way. But I mean, we'll get into it, but I thought that I really appreciate also, like, this book is just so well researched, it's insane, but like the direct quotes she has from all these really famous scholars saying like really atrocious things, and then the descriptions of when like Europeans interacted with indigenous and Black folks for the first time is like really heartbreaking. So yeah. I also read chapter 6, so I don't remember exactly like the differences, but I was just looking at the book now. Okay, I'll popcorn to Ezekiel.
For my summary, I was able to really understand how the European like culture needs this image of other to function. Without it, there is no self-image, there is no European culture or stele. I enjoyed how, how she talked about the media and slavery and all that. One of my favorite parts about the chapter was how she used the white nationalist literature to basically tell on themselves and give us a better picture. To me, white nationalism is what European cultural thought is. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it to Ray.
Thank you. Quick summary. I read chapter 6. I don't remember exactly 5, but
Ray, we can't hear you. Can you get closer to the mic?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Say again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so what I was saying was a quick summary from me is that Europeans can't relate to anyone other than themselves because of their internal self. And they're oftentimes projecting who they are onto others. And therefore, they can't connect with others because no one thinks or acts the same way as they do. Period. That's it. And then I'll go ahead and pass it to Swa.
Okay, for my quick summary, like when I look around me and I see like Black people in my area of the world killing each other, I'm like, not only are they killing each other, but they're doing in such like ridiculous ways by with their pants hanging off their legs and wearing giant chains and like rimmed out vehicles. And then when I read this bit of the chapter, I'm like, oh, the European requires like ridiculous living representations of like their perceived enemy, the people they have in the system of racism as the victims. They have to have their victims presented in such a like atrocious light, such as gangbangers. These things have to become real, and when you make it real, it adds so much justification to your system and to refining it and expanding it. So it allows me to understand like just the images I see around me 24/7, and how in school we learn about Edgar Allan Poe constantly, highly celebrated, but all these people mentioned here are racist suspects, most of them white supremacists. Karl Marx, heavily celebrated by a lot of people, racist suspect. And it's just really important piece of the book. I'll pass it to Ash.
Hi. Yeah. So a summary of the book, I would say, it starts off talking about the media and the portrayal of especially, well, non-white, but especially African people as like almost like naively kind and like savage and primitive, and that kind of like kind naivete is like their supposed downfall. And I thought the parts where the quotes were really, really good. I was glad that they were in there. And I also thought the quote by Captain Hook was just made me really sad to think that people were being really generous and like, caring to someone who was ultimately going to cause like probably like their whole family to be murdered, which is just really, I don't know. I couldn't even imagine like that experience. I thought it was really interesting too, because it made me think about like the whole like magical Black girl and like carefree Black boy, and like the way that Black people have tried to like reclaim those ideas that are projected onto us by white people in this like yeah, like the image of others section really showed me that. I don't know if it's really good to call ourselves that anymore. Like, might be, I don't know, might be adding on to like tropes that have already existed. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing, everyone. Does anyone have any notes or comments from 294 or 295 that they wanted to share? If not, I want to read something and then play the short video.
You should read it, so I don't think we have anything.
All right, so I'm about to read this, and just to contextualize what we're gonna watch. I think it's very like this whole media and the image of others. It's like Black people watch more TV than any other race on the planet. And I have a question for after we watch the clip. Like the images we're gonna see, like how have these images been refined, and how are they still here? So we're gonna dive in. So this is from 295. Add some water first. Then Hollywood took over the image making business. And not only could Black people in America be lampooned in this way, but also Africans on the continent. The result was that both Europeans and Africans rejected what was visually African because Hollywood, the film industry, reigned supreme in the creation and reinforcement of the European self-image. It also had to be the most devastating weapon in the destruction of the self-image of non-European peoples, since that is the flip side of the coin. Seen another way, the films were tools with which to create a negative image of others, from African safaris to Bob Hope comedies with white Cleopatras and crazed Indians, in between a motley array of blatant, stupidly screamed, attacked, giggled, and shuffled itself across the screen, representing non-European peoples in the European consciousness. In fact, the image created in Hollywood modality is a cartoonesque exaggeration of the characteristic already conjured by the European psyche out of the depth of its culture utamawazo, collective cognitive structure. The audiovisual negative image making first, the Amoses and Andes, and the Boulets, and now the Nils, to replace Hattie McDaniel, the Arnold Wilson Webster perennial plurality syndrome of anti-African nationalist sentiment, all struck their blows for the European self-image. So, step in, fetch it. That's who we're gonna see. And we're gonna see a lot more, but just remember that name. Um, yeah. So we're going to watch this now, unless you want to watch it, then discuss.
Swall, what was the name?
Step in fletching, or step in fletching. Some silly name. They always like name a Black person like after inanimate objects, or like him doing like a Black person doing a verb like walking Thomas, or dancing Tom. So we're about to watch this really important clip just to show us how serious white people are about brainwashing the masses, and how heavily in their brain computers their image of Black people being just silly niggers is still embedded. So Black people got to get serious about this problem. All right, so I'm about to share screen.
Yo, you're gonna pause the recording so you don't get flagged.
what'd you say?
Are you gonna pause the recording so you don't get flagged for this?
Oh no, I was gonna put a
Maybe
disclaimer or
upload it.
something, because I should be able to. We should be able to like look at this and talk about it.
Alright.
Easy, stupid, crap-shooting, chicken-stealing idiot was popularized by an actor named Lincoln Theodore Monroe Andrew Perry. The cat made $2 million in 5 years in the middle 30s, and everyone who ever saw a movie laughed at Steppin' Fetch It.
Come out, wherever you is, wherever you be, wherever you do. Come out, wherever you am. How's the government looking for you? Where you going, stranger? You scare somebody stiff like that. I'm looking for hillbillies as you are. I ain't saying I am and I ain't saying I ain't. Well, that's close enough for me, because I'm tired of walking myself. The government told me I got to bring in a hillbilly, so you come go with me to Washington. I ain't a-going. That's the color of another horse. Well, I tell you, you don't go for me. We go for the Navy. No! I go for the Navy. Well, I tell you, go for the Army. No, I won't go for the Army.
He was brave and strong in the face of danger. And the big black man was stupid and cowardly.
What are you afraid of them for?
Oh, honey child, them Yankees is mighty powerful. They can even change the weather.
Yes?
Whenever they come around, I never know whether it's winter or summer. I'm shivering and sweating at the same time.
James Henry, serve these cookies to Master Harold and wipe his chin.
Yes, ma'am, Miss Bud.
She was good to them, and they were good to her. Sort of a master and pet relationship.
How would you like to see Uncle Billy dance?
All right, James Henry, let's get going, son. This is Bill Bojangles Robinson, one of the great ones. But if he wanted to work, he did anything very newsy in a newsreel. Did anything very newsy in a newsreel.
This is the very nicest present I got. Thank you ever so much.
Yes, indeed, children. It was very thoughtful and sweet. Come now, dear.
I'll see you later. Say me. We'll be waiting.
I suppose it might have surprised a lot of Hollywood producers to know a scene like that could actually make a lot of people, mostly black, sick to their stomach. This is a lot of fun, isn't it? The newsreels that were shown along with feature films knew a good thing when they saw one. They helped keep all the black cats in their place. Nobody black ever did anything very newsy in a newsreel. They did things like eat watermelon in watermelon eating contests. Then another favorite for the newsreel cameraman was to film people throwing things at them. Good sport. Some college football publicity man decided this was a good idea. And they were a lot of very funny golf pictures. If you weren't black, they were funny, I guess.
Lie down. Just right out of your mouth.
Don't miss, boss, don't miss.
Well, you keep still, see? Otherwise, you'll have flowers in your room and you won't smell them. Oh, boy. Oh, wait.
That means everything you stand for. And it is the only weapon you two will have. Prestige. But it is enough to preserve you.
Yes, sir. And I'll try to remember it. If you'll kiss me.
Even though most non-white natives of any place were savages in films, it often pleased white producers to endow a few chosen blacks with the virtue of great loyalty to him, the white man. Here's one defending Anne Harding to the death. There was always one loyal and true black man who would do anything for his master. some of them were wonderful people. You know, if you really get a good one. Mostly, though, Negroes were not heroes. They were a bit part servants, railroad porters.
Watch your step. Watch your step, sir. Now, this is your destination, folks.
They made very good chauffeurs. Looked good in their caps.
Good morning, Colonel, sir.
And they were great at serving all kinds of drinks.
All right, I think everyone, yeah, I think everyone can watch this, the rest of it. I think it could be constructive.
The link in the group?
Yeah, it will. But yeah, how are these images? How have these images been refined and in white supremacy today in 21st century?
Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Can I be heard?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go.
I wanted to comment on it. The video is very interesting. I didn't know that it had those images, or at least was that men in dresses? Can somebody clarify that?
What was that? Oh, this guy, I didn't hear the question.
I said, was that men in dresses?
I still can't.
He said, was that man in dresses?
Oh,
I didn't see any.
no, the last frame was not. It was just a mammy figure taking care of white master. Yeah, so how are these images refined? I can answer the question.
I can answer.
Yeah, please do.
Oh, well, I mean, only my opinion, obviously. But like when I saw the first character, it reminded me of, I don't know if you guys ever watched Martin, but there's like the brother man. It reminded me of him who lives on the 5th floor or something like that. Like he's supposed to be kind of slow and it's supposed to be like this big joke. And I feel like a lot of times in Black comedies now, there's those type of characters in there. So instead of having it in like white movies all the time, they always like slip it into the Black movie or the Black shows.
That's interesting. I could definitely see how that's been refined. I didn't think about that. When I saw that guy and I saw those ropes around his neck, all I could think about were like the chains that rappers wear for some reason. Yeah, that first guy, that image, you know, I see a lot of that now in music, in the music industry, in the music videos. You know, a lot of rappers wearing dresses, being feminine or being dumb in their music videos, not really doing anything constructive. You know, I see a lot of that in music now, in music videos. I still see it in movies, but I think, you know, they do it more slyly, like Ash was saying.
I mean, I feel like a lot of these images are still very much exist, and they're just been refined. The black male character in films is still, you know, the sacrificial entity that he's often sacrificed to save the white characters or the white person. And I feel like the TV shows now are a major way that this stuff, like these types of images live on and have been refined. I think every single Black sitcom is riddled with these types of imagery. If you watch a white sitcom, like they find ways to create humor without the characters being the end of the jokes or being the idiots. Oftentimes you'll see in Black sitcoms, like the Black character is always coming over to someone's house uninvited, eating their food and being thrown out. There are oftentimes, I mean, there's a show called Girlfriends where every single scene the Black women are yelling at each other and like demeaning each other, and that's just like a few examples. And I think I watched I watched a movie the other day. I don't remember the name of it, but even in this film, it just showed whenever there was a black person, they were making dumb. Oh yeah, it was Power Rangers, and they have a black character who dies to save his crew. He's brought back to life, and when he's brought back to life, he is talking about how much he loves his friends. And keep in mind, this is a black character that like his relationship with his dad used to be really strong and really like healing and constructive. His dad passes away, and then there's a scene where he's with his friends, and he says, "I don't even miss my dad because of you guys." And it's just so dumb. It's so like subliminal because, of course, like everyone knows that the black male and the black male child have a severed relationship due to racism and supremacy. So yeah, it's just interesting. But this type of video, I want to watch all of it. I think it's really necessary and important. Like Haiti McDaniel was the first black woman to win, well, black female to win a Oscar, and she won her Oscar by being a mammy figure, by being in Gone with the Wind, and serving these white people so good to the point where they gave her a Oscar. And of course, the black people driving white people around trope has been done so many times. The most famous, I think, is probably Driving Miss Daisy with Morgan Freeman. But yeah, just watch any movie, any TV show, and watch how they treat black people, or watch the dumb decisions black people make. This stuff is still happening.
Yeah, I wanted to
Trey.
add on to what Trey was saying too, because I think another way they try to refine it is like, if you think about Green Book, it's supposed to be the opposite, right? The white man is like driving around the black guy, but then they have to make the black guy have no connection to his black culture, when like the actual character in real life was like really connected to the black community. But the only way they can justify like him having a white man drive him around is if he's a black man who doesn't have any connection to blackness, which I thought was really interesting. And I think too, like, I know there's this new show, The Queen's Gambit, that's out, and there's like a black character, a black girl, and I think at one point she literally says like, "I'm not a magical Negro," like those words, but she actually, like, her character is exactly like a magical Negro. And I feel like the white people who made it just decided to make her character completely like focused on helping this white woman, and then just say like, "I'm not a magical Negro," as if it's like a way to dissolve the actual truth of what her character is, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and like honestly, like this documentary, it had earlier in the documentary and further, it talks about how like the stereotypes of black people being superstitious and being afraid of ghosts, and that being like one of the reasons the KKK was formed according to the lore and Birth of a Nation. And it's just like ridiculous. And we see her mention that like they view us as either superstitious or witches or magical Negroes. I don't need to find a better word for it. But if anyone else want to answer the question before I answer, or I'll be the last person to answer. Sarah, Mary, you guys have no idea how these images have been refined. Haven't seen any movie.
Mary's house. Oh, wait, Mary. Okay, I'll go. I think I was just disturbed at how I recognize the little girl as Shirley Temple from commercials, as in she's like heralded as this American icon, and I was just like there's even a drink named after her, and just so conveniently whenever they show her now, like in 2015, 2020, it's just her where she's like dancing by herself, but they never show her interact with any black characters. And like I had never seen any of her movies before, so I didn't even know it was within this like context. And it's so I'm kind of just like thinking about that. But yeah,
they love to glorify their racist suspect. So
one more thing about magical Negroes. I feel like that trope was refined to perfection, and the Oscar-winning film, The Green Mile. I never watched it because even as a kid, I knew what this movie was about. I knew that it's something I shouldn't watch. But and this movie came out, tall, big, dark-skinned black guy who would frighten most white people as like, this child who has the power of healing people. So yeah, like white people do put a lot of emphasis on black people being magical or having like superstitious powers. I know in London, whites love asking me about things beyond the universe, and since I got here, I've never really played that game with them. Like, I don't really share like my magical secrets, so you will.
Yeah, I remember watching Transformers 2, and then like it was like two robots, and like most of the voice actors for the robots were black. And I remember two robots saying each other, I can't even read. And I was like, wow, like this is before I didn't even know anything about racism. And I just knew that this was very like, odd, and and perhaps racist. I don't remember because it was so long ago. But we have like, robots who like are, step inflections, like, black caricatures in a sense. Not in a sense, but literally, because whenever you have to understand that in media, also whenever you see like a robot or an alien or anything non-human, that is supposed to be a non-white or black person. So like, so they now have robots, like they call it transformers, who are, perpetuating, racist.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, so I do believe I was slave 0526. If I'm not wrong, I do believe one of the robots had like buck tooth and a gold teeth, and I do believe one of them had a gold chain or something around his neck, and I do believe they both rapped at one point in the film. So yeah, just more things to add to it.
Yeah, and it's like $1 billion making franchises, and it's just that, and the danger is that black people, non-white people, consume this stuff, get the programming, and not understanding like, hey, I'm being trained that like, black people should be made fun of, and myself should, participate in. I can have some fun doing it. Attack black, seek black out, exclude black, do not help black. These are all the messages we receive in media, thanks to white supremacy.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a book called Color Monitors by Dr. Kevorkian, who is a white person and has been on the cows several times. He has a book called Color Monitors where he goes into depths on like how what Swat said is virtually true. Basically, how if you are watching a film, TV show, and you are watching a monster, if you're watching like a robot, whenever you're seeing tech or non-human organisms that are not white, you are seeing a manifestation of what European society, what European like beliefs see black people as. They see them as these monstrosities. They see them as these supreme killing beings. Like the Terminator, like the first actor for Terminator was supposed to be what's the guy's name? O.J. Simpson. But instead of casting him, they casted Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then they just made sure that the skeleton underneath the skin was black. Black as white. Yeah. So yeah, like Terminator is a really good case study on like how white people view black people.
Yeah. And it's also important to remember Dr. Precipice Wilson, thank you for like helping us to solve this problem. But these aliens, these robots, they're also the threat. They're either like a threat or they're being used by white people to aid them in their conquer and their white supremacist agendas. And this is just only an entertainment field of people activity. So, and this is 24/7. It's very hard to find a film that will not have ghetto glorification or racist messages. So I hope everyone is like able to decode films through like understanding like that you know, this system, everything supports the system, so everything can be decoded, understood as related to.
Yeah, definitely. Like you guys made a lot of interesting points. I definitely have been decoding. Every time I watch something now, I'm decoding it. I can't watch it without decoding it, honestly. Sometimes I only watch things to decode them now. It reminds me of the blog the thing you shared in the WhatsApp about the Matrix. You know,
Incredible, right?
yeah, I was reading it and I was like, man, this is really good. I want to watch the Matrix now. So I'm gonna watch the Matrix and then read it and then see and then really think about it because I've seen the Matrix, but it's been a very long time. I haven't. I knew that movie was somehow important or had some important meanings in it, but I haven't cared to watch it again. So I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
Sorry to backtrack, but you guys brought up a lot of good points on page 294 when she talks about on 294 it says it was important to the system of white supremacy that white people continually reinforce their European consciousness at the expense of the African image throughout degradation, and two, that the Africans continue to act like slaves of a new sort and indeed become what Europeans portrayed them to be. The objective of the European was thwarted to the degree that an African consciousness was sustained among people of African descent that allowed them to reject the European created image of them. So that last part, I think she's talking about the few of that, like, I definitely think that that's a minority, the African consciousness that she's talking about. If I interpreted what she says, I think, we're in that minority. But it's interesting how she says they have to act like slaves of a new sort, and you think about how we have to be portrayed as slaves in images. You saw that with the black and white films with that girl Shirley Temple, and now I see people acting like new slaves of a sort to money and clout and
material,
fame.
attention.
Yeah. So I think she's definitely spot on with that. Spot on.
Yeah, like it's really tragic, but like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing said that like she believes that like 1/10 of like non-white people like understand racism, what it is, and how it works. Like less than 1% of like non-white people understand like the depth and the grasp of what's happening around them. And then if you look around, it can definitely explain, why no one seems to be like, caring that a lot of people are being mistreated on basis of color, or if they do, they're going about it in non-constructive ways of solving the problem because they're not actually sitting down and studying the problem, learning about the problem, understanding the problem. So how do we see these new slaves? You mentioned you mentioned various things, Ezekiel. I see them at. I think we allow, not we allow, but the highly educated slave who serves the system while working at like a professor who a black professor who works at a institution who doesn't teach the truth about racism and white supremacy, as I met many, so I think that's also like what black people are forced to do, what victims are forced to do in this system of racism. They have to, everyone's a slave, but how are you going to be a slave? Are you going to be a constructive slave, a serious slave, or are you just going to be a do what you're told slave?
Yeah, I just want to chime in a bit on what Swat said. I went to UC Berkeley, and I took a class called Transatlantic, the history of like slavery. Not once did the professor at this supposedly elite institution bring up white supremacy, or even like the sugar-coated version when people say white male domination or what the fuck they say. Like there is no mention of the actual power relationship between Black people and white people. It was just a history of like basically toned down facts. Even if the data that she was presenting wasn't even that much that valuable, considering that it was so it was written in a way that would protect the white people. And I think that's definitely more refinement. You know, slaves becoming more and more like I guess more, you know, intelligent in their survival. You know, you can't really say too much if you want to, you know, be comfortable. And most Black people are, you know, too busy trying to be comfortable versus trying to be free. And being free just means working towards replacing racism, white supremacy with a system of justice where no one is hurt and those who receive, those who need the most help receive the most help. Yeah, we're not asking for much here, guys.
Oh yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think it was gonna take me a while to like really think about it because it has a lot of depth to it. I would say when I go to my mom's and I watch her watching MSNBC and there's Black pundits on there, I think the whole a Black pundit is just like a person who discusses the news in a way that they're like analyzing it, but it's almost like they're like a person in a basketball game talking about it, not talking about actual people's lives, just talking about it as if who wins or loses, like it's a sport. And I think like the whole Black public intellectuals are like the new crop of like new slaves personally who like are, you know, putting around a rhetoric that is really harmful to Black people, but they're profiting off of it. Just like the way white people used to profit off of anti-racism, Black people are profiting off of anti-racism too.
Candace Owens. Candace Owens. So I was just giving that example. Candace Owens.
Yeah.
I felt.
Does anyone know who Candace Owens is?
Wait, but I wasn't. And I also anyone who's like, you know, rise and grind type culture, like that is being a slave to capitalism. Is a lot of slavery going on.
It intensifies slavery. Yeah, I really yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say, but anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I have an additional comment to make. It's Ray, by the way. I'm glad that Ashley brought up that point of where everyone is making profit off of, like, I'm gonna put quote unquote Black culture. I just like kind of sum everything up to that. And in the book, on even like page 296 and 294, they call this racial humor, and it's funny because that's exactly what it is. Like, people are joking around, they're not serious about like someone making fun of them or someone laughing at them, because they just join in and say, hey, well, if you're laughing, I can laugh too, and everything's okay. But in reality, it's like, it's not okay. Like, you shouldn't even be laughing. You should take this seriously. And it goes into like entertainment. It goes to all the entertainment rims, and even in just daily life, where you just walk into work and people are just laughing at you, and then you're laughing too. You know, so I think it's very important in this, where it's like Black people need to know like their history, know who they are as like Black individuals and are non-white individuals, instead of just like laughing at what like the white media has created their image to be, because it's not true.
Dang, I wanna comment on that. That was a great point. You know, she talks about how, you know, everyone's laughing now. Like, everyone's laughing at you. Now it's okay to laugh at Black people. You know, on page 295 it says, then Hollywood took over the image-making business, and not only could Black people in America be lampooned in this way, but also Africans on the continent. The result was that both Europeans and Africans rejected what was visually African. So now everyone's laughing at what's visually African, you know, and it's okay now. Now even the Africans don't even want what's African. So it's like people are laughing at you. Huh?
I said Coming to America. That
exactly.
That's a great example of what you just read.
I've never seen that movie, but I've heard of it, and yeah, I know that's a great example.
I've never seen it either. I just know enough about the system and like seen about the movie to put it together.
Yeah, but to round off my point, you know, now, you know, you're basically like like Ray was saying, the European media have, made it visually unappeasing. Visually, everyone doesn't want to be African, so now everyone's laughing at being African. Nobody's taking being African serious, and so on. Now everyone thinks, European images are serious. European images are what's desirable.
Literally.
That's so true. You know, when I was a kid, just saying you're African was the punchline to the joke. Like that was literally it. Like that term was so demeaning that you could say that and put someone down, which is really crazy when you think about how like people have internalized their own just self-hate.
Yeah. Tragic.
Oh yeah, kids are. I remember, when you're a kid and you don't know any better, you just let people just shit all over you, and that shit is not okay. Looking back, I should have killed a lot of those people, talking to me the way they're talking to me. But instead, I'm just laughing, going along with it. Like this is all funny. This is all jokes.
You know, who knows? If you were white, you may have killed them all.
Scratch that from the record. Us Black people have ego seizures that say yes, that cause us to say things that we don't really mean. It's part of the white supremacy system. Scratch that.
Yeah, that was a part of my programming. Sorry, I'm working on that. I should have just taken myself more seriously and got out of those situations, unfriended those people. Yeah.
Yeah, but I totally understand that 100%. I also participated in all kinds of negative behaviors, and it's just what I was trained to do. I was trained to do it, and goddamn it, I did it well. I think I need to read this. Because I say this word.
I don't know.
Yeah, exigency.
What page?
296.
Yeah, 296.
Exigencies.
Yeah, exigencies. If anybody can say this word, help me out. But I had to look up what this word meant because I thought it was an important word. And of course, if you understand the word, you should look it up. So I was like, okay, so this word means an urgent need, like something heavy, like something like required, like something like a urgent need. This is what the word means. So this whole part is oh wow, the European has such a warp, really unjust self-image, and it sees itself in such a low light that without Black people and non-white people in such a pitiful position that it would literally crumble to anxiety and self-destruct. Because we learn also in this section that if you ever seen that movie Braveheart, it's a really good example of how white people before they were conquering Black and non-white people, they were killing and pillaging themselves. And it's just about how it's their nature to have to aggress and conquer things in places. So without this system in place and being able to direct this energy at groups of people, they would self-destruct. So this place says. So it needs this self-image of Black people. So if Black people could be the most peaceful person, you could counter this system by never even wanting to think, hey, I need to kill white people. You need to practice, non-white self-respect and not participating in the pounding around, name calling, gossiping, ratting on each other, anything that supports the system, And you should always try to exist in truth, tell the truth. And, so what if the truth makes people uncomfortable? It's not your fault. You're born in this hell system called race white supremacy. So, I think that's the best thing non-whites can do and to solve this problem. But
and just to add to that too, basically you just said non-white people need to self-love. They need to love who they are and practice it every single day, because the pushing of, hey, this is right, this is how you should look, and this is the way you should act is very toxic, right? Toxic to a non-white person, because we're not in the same behavioral and thought process as someone who's European, so therefore we can never reach what a European has. Therefore, vice versa as well. And it's like, but we don't even need to, because we are like the S, you know, we are the bag. But they said truly believing that we're the bag is just something that needs to be practiced every day. Because someone could talk about you all day in high school or in school in anywhere, like, oh, your hair is this, or you look like this, or you're this, because they're projecting who they truly are. But once you know that they're projecting who they are, it's like once you can start to say, like, it's okay that I am the way I am because I'm beautiful inside and out. You know, it's like that self-love. So it's very interesting. Great point, Swell.
Ray made some good points, but I would ask, is it possible for Europeans to practice self-love?
I'm not talking about Europeans. I'm actually talking about non-white people.
Okay, I was confused then. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, I don't know. When Swa said what he said, I just realized, like, oh my God, we live in. This is like at least 99.9% the world that the white supremacist wants. Like, it's already here for them, like literally in every way. People who are almost completely eradicated. People who are almost pretty much slaves, and a few people propped up to make sure nobody thinks they're not. Everything is like in their rightful order already, which is pretty sad. It makes me think about like makes me think about liberal white people in a different way. I feel like they already know they won the spoils of war, and they're like okay with just giving a little bit away. But yeah, I don't know why. I just thought of that. I didn't realize it's because I was trying to think what is our perfect, or at least like ideal or just world, and then I was like, oh, this is hell.
My ideal and counter racist logic ideal of justice is what we say all the time. You know, we're the balance between people. So I want to read this because like we all have to understand like white supremacy as the DNA of this current society. You know, and until we replace it with a system of justice, it will continue to be. You know, if it's a DNA, everything will be exist within it. So this was from 296, and it reads, where's the what I wanted to read? Okay. European world supremacy is part of the definition of European ideology. You know, they're like hand in hand. They're like, you can't even separate the worldview, it seems. And helps to determine the character of the European image of others. In this worldview, the universe is there to be conquered. It is just, i.e., rational, that inferiors should be conquered by superior beings. In this way, European self-definition and self-fulfillment became dependent on a negative image of self-others in terms of European value, and a correspondingly dehumanizing concept of others. You know, hence footage we just saw, hence system we all are subjected to, and us all using our time right now to learn about this problem and to solve it. You know, we're not here because we're having fun. So yeah.
I'm gonna. I think something from this from page 297 couples what you just read perfectly. I want to read it. It says, we can identify Westernness as the definition of self and world that naturally views self in a power relationship to other, the rest of the world. In this view, the silly or seed of Westernness is the power relationship and was planted very early in the Indo-European experience. As a result, it is in the nature of the European Utumarajo that it cannot be sustained by a merely intracultural ethic or the ideal of a self-contained environment that generates the principle of harmony and mutual respect. It is European culture that is dependent on the existence of other cultures. Perhaps the habit of relating to the rest of the world on the basis of an unending striving for power has spilled over and infested the internal fabric of the society itself. Circularly, the need to relate to others, and this way can be explained by the functional need to mitigate internally destructive behaviors. So I think, in short, she's saying that Europeans need to control and dominate other cultures, and that I'm not really sure if there's some like internal harmony within white people. Last time I checked, white kids are still grabbing their parents' guns and then going into the schools and killing their fellow white peers. So I'm not really sure what this harmony is, or if it's possible. I do think if white people didn't have Black people to subjugate to terrible, horrific instances and other non-white people, they would just go back to like pagan times when they were killing each other and chopping each other's heads off and setting each other on fire. They would just go back to that. So the European is a divisive, monstrous creature. And like the European is the true savage. That's what I would say.
Agreed. I had that part highlighted too, Trey. I had the part where it said, as a result, it is in the nature of the European Chamorro that it cannot be sustained by merely intercultural ethics or the idea of a self-contained environment that generates the principle of harmony and mutual respect. It is European culture that is dependent on the existence of other cultures. And, basically for me, I interpret that as, what we've been saying all along, that, if the European didn't leave, and even what, was it Julius Caesar even said himself, if they didn't leave Europe, they would stay there and keep killing each other. They need slaves in order to not kill each other. They need an enemy in order not to kill each other. So, and, that's why they're dependent on other cultures solely for that fact, to subjugate and control them. That was reinforcing for me. So I wanted to make that point. I don't know if
I wrote down one sentence from what we both had highlighted, and my sentence was, this is from a European perspective. How much better am I than you? I feel like whenever I'm interfacing with a white person, there's always like so many questions and the questions exist to get information from me, like where I stand in personality. I tell white people that I went to Berkeley. I've been to like almost 50 different countries by myself. And they start asking immediate questions because they feel like this nigger, this Black thing has done more than me. This Black creature has experienced more life than me. And it's true. Now I'm understanding, like I'm understanding the European devil way more.
And then it's funny that you wrote that, because I feel on the flip side, I said on the side right there, this idea of who has or had it worse and to relate to others. I feel like Europeans are always like, oh, I was poor once too, or oh, I had it worse than you did and I made it, or whatever it is. It's like this, the only way they feel they can relate is like to go this competition of, oh, who had it worse, you or me?
In the system of racism, I believe white people want to also be Black people. So because we are victims, they also want to be victims. So they play the victim card a lot too. White people. Yeah. So I want to read this part from.
Sorry, before you read, I'd like to comment on the passage that Trey read. I had some notes down for that as well. But first, I'd just like to say the comment that you made about that you wrote, Trey, they're better than me. That's what actually inspired my You guys, 1 second. So that's what actually inspired my my understanding, along with the text, of why kindness is seen as weakness, because everything was reversed in a sense based on the Utamawazo. But what I wrote down from that passage was the dependency of the European to see themselves to see their self-image in relation to the power of others is the number one. It's going to be their number one downfall. It's going to be their number one downfall
Yeah. Oh,
As
Mary.
as
Sorry.
yes,
I'm sorry. Keep going.
as this manner as this manner somehow as this manner of thinking from the people who they're controlling will inevitably seek to rebel or express their truer version of themselves. And in doing so, this will constantly always shatter the image of the European, because they don't know what to measure by, as if once somebody is out of their control. So it's a self-destructing Assyrian mentality in itself, because as we see what we're experiencing now in our day and age, we are moving more into an understanding of knowing ourselves, and the more we know ourselves, we're not going to beat to their drum. We will see behaviors, we'll see how they want us to react, and through decoding and being able to understand, like the foundation of this group allows me in outside circumstances to understand where I'm being triggered, and to now choose my response versus just acting on autopilot. And a lot of us in our races and in our cultural groups are not having this understanding are having this understanding now. So it's confusing the European Assyrian, it's confusing their culture. Like, you see, anything that we do is jumped on and is taken on board, because, of course, because they have no culture, but more so it's because they're confused and want to be able to dominate any new form of culture that comes up and take it on as themselves. And so that passage helped me understand that, and this articulation is helping me further understand like where it's going to go if it continues, and we continue to control our own selves and express ourselves in our truest form.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I liked what you said about them, like their utamo also being their downfall, because I think that's really true, especially when you think about COVID right now. I remember watching an interview with Donald Trump, and the interviewer was like, oh yeah, so the COVID cases are up here. Like, what's going on? And he's like, it's not that bad. It's worse in other places. Let me show you. He has like a list of like China and all these other places. And it's always like a competition instead of like, why are you not fixing your own like country? Why is it always a comparison to others? And even this whole race to get the vaccine, it's all about competition and who gets it first, instead of just like, hey, why don't we all collectively find a solution to this problem? It's very interesting.
What Mary said, what Mary said reminded me of a video I saw, and that kind of gives insight to what's going on now. So I saw a video of a white person driving his car around, throwing toilet paper at people, and he threw it. This is a famous white person, by the way. He threw toilet paper at a white passing male. And the white passing male immediately said, I'm about to knock this nigga out. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? what? So you have two white-looking people, just behaving as honestly, they're behaving like they're behaving naturally, I suppose. But if you ask a white person what's going on, they'll say, "Oh, they're acting like a bunch of niggers," aka people who look like myself, unfortunately. But yeah, that Mary brought up.
Yeah, Mary, I really appreciate that you said that their like self-image is gonna be like their downfall, because that's totally correct. Once non-white people, are out here asking questions and telling white people, hey, go tell white people, the very powerful white supremacists, to stop practicing racism. Once like this is happening on a critical mass scale, the white supremacists are gonna be like, all right, listen up. We gotta go kill these non-whites because we can't subjugate them anymore. Or let's go about installing this system of justice, But that's like, very like, plausible, logical solution to this problem. But, there's like Ezekiel said, we are a very, very, very small group of people attempting to do this. But, yeah. But yeah, thanks for saying that, Mary. Well said, Mary and Trey and Ash.
Yeah. So I wanted to pose a question.
on if nobody has anything.
Oh, and I was gonna read, but you
I'd rather hear the question. Yeah, I was gonna read too, but.
Oh, well, I just wanted to get everyone's, 298 through 299, where we just get, a list of just garbage, like what did people find most interesting? Like, I highlighted Abraham Lincoln. I just wanted to get everyone else's opinion, on what.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna use that Abraham Lincoln one to make a post because I feel like a lot of Negroes and white people and other non-whites who are miseducated and misguided, they really do think Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and that didn't happen. He was not responsible for slaves fucking actually not being in prison anymore. And I think his quote is epic. I think his quote is an epic manifestation of the European ultima wazo. I think that's what every white person thinks right now, today, so very relevant. And I just think it's a great, it just shows us what he really is, which is a piece of shit like most white supremacists, and people who are advocates of white supremacy. Because what does he say? He says, I would like to prefer where the superiority is in the hands of the white people, because and also I think that's double speak by him saying that he's aware that black people are very, very, very powerful beings. So hey, we got to keep them under lock and key. But to answer your question, Ezekiel, that Abraham Lincoln one was the one that made me feel the most sick, I guess, but also like it was the most logical one too, because this guy has really been described as a hero responsible for freeing black people. Not true.
For me, it was definitely Karl Marx's quote.
Yeah, that one too.
Yeah, I read a lot. Obviously, a lot of the shit I read is informed by dialectic, materialism, blah blah blah, Marxism. So I was just like, bloop. There it is. People always say, and I read, and I know a lot of Black Marxists and stuff. So it's just interesting to like finally have that reference, because I've heard people say a million times like Marx said some really fucked up anti-Black shit, but I had never read it myself. So,
I don't agree with that.
Oh, with what?
Oh no, not with you. So I'll put something in the chat.
Oh, dumb and confused. Cool. Okay.
Actually, Sarah, Marx has said even more racist stuff. I thought this was pretty benign compared to the.
No, for sure it was, but I haven't like read it, but I was like, where is it? And I'm like, oh, it's in the letters, because it's not. I've never haven't read it in like his books, but I knew it was fucked. So that was like, I was just like, bloop, I have one. But yeah, if we can skip ahead a little bit, I just have like a lot of thoughts on page 302 that I wanted to share, that I was like discussing.
Jump around if you're pressed for time, if you want to share.
People. Yeah, thanks, because it's snowing and I don't have a car, so I have to go walk to the pharmacy. Anyways, so yeah, the two descriptions of with like Columbus meeting indigenous people and then Captain Cook like made me, like really fucking devastating. And the things they describe are like indigenous people's like communalism and like good faith and assuming the best and just like like the most based loving type of like behavior you could have towards anyone. And even what they described, like the bad things they described, it was like they were so comfortable taking our shit. I feel like that speaks to both their European individualism, but also like non-white people just being like, yeah, why wouldn't I have access to this? Like, why wouldn't you want to share with me? Like, I share everything with you. Like, it doesn't make sense. And it just made me think of so much like in the co-ops when like white people are so pressed about so many things and just like, who's touching my shit? Like, so like Okay, bye, Mary. See you next week. Excited to talk chapter 6. It's so good. Literally probably one of my favorite chapters so far. But anyways.
Thank you. Take care. I was enjoying what you're saying, but I really
they describe like these indigenous people being like is all what like when I read like indigenous philosophy, like what is described like respect your elders, like be a good host, like you know, all this shit. But now what I was thinking about, which is like so colonizer behaviors, all this stuff that they're describing is now like what white people are, and honestly like a lot of non-white people too, but who like I would say like have access to wealth already and stuff, like writing little self-help books being like be communal, blah blah blah, like antidotes to capitalism, but it's really just like basic regurgitated bullshit, like stuff that like indigenous and black people like are raised with, but now they're just like putting it in little Instagram graphics and it's just like co-opting it as their own knowledge. And it's like, this is how I have peace and I self-care. It's like I am a good host and like welcome people. But like, yeah, so that was just like my take. And it was, you know, just like really heartbreaking, obviously, like just seeing how like the different types, just like people are so warm and like honestly made me want to cry.
I wanted to cry too when I was
yeah,
reading.
just like, and and I just hate that. I hate like I've seen this regurgitated so many times now. Like when I was in high school, they would watch some video of some like white British person going to somewhere in like Eastern Africa, and like being like, yeah, we visited, and even though a Coca-Cola was like 2 months of their labor, they still gave it to us without thinking. And I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like this is so fucked up the way they think about that, and like how they're just like, isn't it crazy how still despite having nothing they're just so giving and loving to us white people, you know? And I'm just like, the lack of self-awareness, and like you could have, instead of going to visit, you should have just given them $1,000. But like anyways, like I'm just, I mean not cuss, but yeah, that was like my take. And I was just like talking about that with my friend, how like this stuff is like so basic, like anti-capitalism is just like non-white philosophy by like definition and the Asili, and then like spirituality, all that stuff. I just, you know, I interface a lot obviously with a lot of white spaces because of like my career and blah blah, blah and where I was raised and all this stuff, and so like I see it a lot and I'm just like, I can't believe people make money off of this. Like it's bullshit. Like you have to be told to care for others. But anyways,
yeah,
that's thank you for listening. That was my spiel.
Yeah, that was great, Sarah. You know, I just wanted to add, you know, real quick, you know, I was just talking about that earlier, you know, walking around this neighborhood. I'm in Redlands right now, and if you're not familiar, it's like a white affluent area, you know. So I'm walking around here and I'm just looking at the houses and, you know, people putting all these Black Lives Matter signs in their, you know, and it's like, they just think like by doing that, they're absolved of everything. Like they've done their part, you know, like that, you know, so that's what it reminded me of what you were talking about right now, you know. So it's like, you bought like a, I don't know where you got that sign at, you know, you bought it, you put it in your driveway, and now you know, I think that goes more into chapter 6, but
yeah.
I get what you're talking about. You know?
Do you want to go, Sor?
Oh no, go.
Okay. Wait, I have to gather my thoughts.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that part like really, it's so interesting because right before I was reading it, I was watching these native Hawaiian children, like girls playing ukulele. And then I watched it and I read this right after and I was like, fuck, like, oh my God, just the, it's just really, really, really sick, you know, and you, it's also in Destruction of Black Civilization. They talk about that too, that Black people were generally like, oh, here's a new person. Like, let's have our like hire person and our, you know, like give this person gifts and do all these things for them.
Help
and
them. Are you okay? Do you need anything?
Yeah. And like treat them with all of this hospitality just to like have them murder all of them or enslave them. And know that they're going to do it, to have it pre-planned, like premeditated genocide and stuff. Like it was a lot for me. And I totally agree with like the co-opting of basically like non-white spirituality or just like philosophy on like, living and being like, look at me, like I am, like it's all like I remember watching like what is that one movie, Into the Wild, and I was like, oh, this is such a great movie. This man is like leaving society to live with like, and it's like that's like literally all like non-white people do all the time, right? Like he's not special for doing that, and yet people give them so much. I mean, he wrote a whole book about it and I mean, he died obviously, but like I don't know. It's just interesting how
that's what people think of when they think of connection with nature, and they don't think of like non-white people who are literally stewards of.
But even in the process of doing that, I don't even think they're really connecting. I think they're still doing it because it's gonna benefit you. It'll be self-care, it's healing. It's not like I'm just like passing on good vibrations as well to like the nature. It's more like I want to take all of its like goodness and like its pureness, you know.
Like this will help me get a promotion at Google because people will think I have good balance in my life.
Yeah.
And like think I have it all, but no. Yeah. It's just, oh God, it's so sad. Like they never say no. They invite anyone. They show so much lovingness as though they would give their hearts. Like, fuck you, Columbus. I can't believe it. Also, like, it's weird because I feel like so much of what they wrote in the olden times, like, doesn't really hit because it's written in, like, Old English. But this is so, like, colloquial that it just, like, is so easy to imagine someone saying that and, like, really.
Yeah, I can see this as, like, one of, like, the origins of, like, where the European, like, view of, like, non-whites being childlike, this childlike idea came from, because, you know, remember, they can't view like non-whites, you know, being hospitable as kind, as something a part of their culture. They automatically see that as dumb, silly, and like, what are you doing? You're making yourself vulnerable. Don't you know at any moment you can be killed? Okay, this is the mentality white people have, the kill or be killed mentality, you know, that non-white people were totally unprepared for.
Yeah, I think she even talks about it. She talks about how they see that as a primitive form, like you grow into being deceitful and like selfish. Like,
they're like, why would you offer trust and friendship, you fucking idiot? Like, you're like a little kid.
So I truly believe like that, because this like adult child system called racism, white supremacy is so like alive and well and so powerful. So many Black people and non-white people are aware that in some form they are a child, because we have people like, you know, Kid Cudi, you know, who's a
little baby,
who's a rapper, little baby, you know, and also like, you know, like 2014 when I knew nothing about racism and white supremacy, I started writing a book called Children of War, you know, because like just the truth will always find its way out, you know. And it's just you know, and the truth is we live in a system that makes Black people and non-white people children, you know, and it comes from like white people not being able to view, you know, ancient cultures or non-aggressive culture as anything worth not being dominated. You know?
I also wanted to add, like, I think it's interesting in the context of, I feel like sometimes white people like to say that if it wasn't white people, like they like to espouse that human nature is just like inherently evil. Yeah, like then someone else would have done it or something. And you can see from so many texts that other cultures were just not like that at all and didn't have that type of structuring, which I think is really interesting, that even though these people are in Hawaii versus like people in West Africa, they still have very similar philosophies in terms of how they interact with people. I don't even they think they consider them other, you know, it's just people that exist, which I thought was interesting. I was gonna say something else, but I forgot now.
Yeah. I want to read this because I think this is important, something for us always to remember. And Sarah.
Oh wow, I'm sorry, Sarah. That's horrible.
Sarah, because you have access to Sarah, because you have access to being among white people, you know, be sure to ask them lots of questions and like, you know, and
I know I do.
And the ones that are capable say, hey, how about you also help to like create a system of justice, you know. And then if any
Especially
white
trying
person,
to just get them to funnel funds to Black people, I know, but
no, forget about that. Say, hey, you know what a system of justice is, and then tell them what a system of justice is, and then a white person who is not interested in that, they can be classified as a racist, white supremacist.
okay. I will start thinking that.
So you have access to the white people. When I am among them again, I will also do this.
So many.
You should tell them that your childlike nature is not free and they have to compensate if they're using your energy.
Bro, I'm literally like, bro, I'm just being kind. It's not even that deep. But anyways.
so let me read this.
Yeah, what page, Swa?
297. So viewed in a different way, the process begins with the embryonic Indo-European self, which fears all difference. This fear then translated into an epistemological paradigm by the archaic European Greek, where the self of the opposition becomes paramount. Then in medieval and Renaissance Europe, the perceived self is expanded so that the continuance of the culture may be assured, the asili fulfilled. Otherwise, it would self-destruct. Therefore, aggression against other cultures becomes a necessity. Damn. So, you know, if you can't train white people to be about creating a system of justice, you know, I feel like it's very possible, as many great counter racists have said. But yeah, what do you guys think about that? Like this system requires 24/7 mistreatment of people on the basis of color.
Oh, wait, I wanted to add on to that actually. I'm gonna respond,
Yeah.
but like that's what I was thinking of in page 300 when she says, according to Lovejoy Fenelon, says that it is in the natural order of things that men be provided with ferocious animals to kill, so that men might be relieved of the necessity of killing one another. And I was like, oh wow, like police shootings, lynchings,
Yeah. So
like all these like public executions that they do of Black men, all of that give white people healing energy as a community, so that it's like a buffer, so they don't have to hurt each other, and they don't have to like, it's like this way that they can all collectively heal. And I just thought it was so sick. Like,
yeah, I think it's important to decode this Lovejoy, her saying or whoever them this person saying ferocious animals, that's decoded as non-white Black people. And you know, you see often that, like, you know, movies, someone will get shot and he'll be like animal, you know. And yeah, any thoughts on, you know, the non-white being the animal meant to be mistreated?
Yeah, you know, Ashley brought up a good point. Her quote, good point. I wanted to follow up. You know, right after that on 301, said as long as they have non-white peoples to conquer, to subjugate, enslave, colonize, and exploit, it will lessen the chances of their attempting to do so within the Western European community. This is not to say that European intercultural behavior is typically loving, kind, or considerate, according to these definitions, within other cultures. But the culture sanctions behavior towards others that is of a totally different and more dehumanizing character than is acceptable behavior towards each other. So you know, it just tells me that, you know, the European asili, you know, since it requires other, it can never see, you know, the African, which is defined as other, it can never see it as self, you know. And because this is telling me that Europeans are able to see self, and they see self within other Europeans, so they treat each other differently, although still horribly, still differently, you know. The way that, because Africans are others, they will never be able to be treated. They will never be seen as self, so they'll never be treated. They will never be treated, you know, as the European treats the person. You know, there's a specific behavior for the other that the European Utamaroho requires the European to, you know, to execute. Yeah. So, you know, the Europeans will, I don't think they'll ever be able to, you know, respect the African or respect the self-defined other, you know. I don't think it's possible for them. I think that's my answer to your question. So I think
I would say I would say I would say the evidence would say that it would go against their racist logic. You know, we have to counter racist logic exists due to racist logic being in place currently. So you may be totally correct, and them being incapable, you know, unless the only way they'll be able to stop practicing racism, literally, if all the subjects are codified just as they are codified to perpetuate the system.
And then just to answer your question, Swa, as well, like I totally agree with like what Ezekiel mentioned too. Like I don't think they're capable of doing that. And it's weird because, not to jump too far ahead, but on page 304 it talks about like these Christian virtues that they have to like create some type of like religion, quote unquote, to teach them how to act right, to teach them how to be what you'll call like normal culture, of just doing good naturally. It's like, no, you need a religion to say that you're doing good. And if you don't follow this religion, that means you're like rebellious. You're your natural self. So it's like this continuous thing, like, hey, come to this church so I can tell you to love thy neighbor, love thy enemy, all of these things, because naturally, like, you don't know how to love. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to read that part on 304 if nobody had something to comment real quick, because I highlight that whole section about Christian virtues. If nobody wanted to.
Yeah, I wanted to
a quick comment about what Ray said. Well said, Ray. Yes, religion has done a wonderful job in training Black people to so-called turn the other cheek and so-called love thy neighbor, and also love thy enemy. The neighbor could be a white person. She would always be, suspicious of any white person under the system of racism, white supremacy. So well said, Ray. I think the strongest religion proven to be is racism and white supremacy. Okay, you're gonna say something? Trey, you have something to say?
Bye, Sarah. If you
we can't hear you, Trey.
I think.
Trey, I think you're muted.
It's all right. I think I was talking to Mary.
Mary, I was talking to Mary. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read on 304. I want to talk about these Christian virtues. But on 304, after that poem, that very powerful poem, it says, what characteristics do Africans and others display? And what would these characteristics indicate about our ethical systems, our worldview? We people of other cultures are all too often make the mistake of attempting to treat this European who comes to take our land and who looks so different from us as a brother or a sister. Africans and other non-European peoples invariably seek to include him in our system of gift exchange, offering him love and peace. In other words, the purely rhetorical precepts of behavior, propagandized as the Christian virtues, are actually the models of behavior natural to other cultures and older traditions than that of the European. And Europeans naturally display behavior patterns that are in direct contradiction to what they have labeled as Christian virtues, i.e. virtues that are actually African/non-European values and standards of behavior, which their own culture does not generate, support, motivate, nor sanction. People of other cultures often must be taught to mistrust their enemy, those who could not destroy them, those who would destroy them. Europeans instinctively hate or rather do not love those outside their culture who are a priori enemy. So, talking about Christianity, like what's the role of Christianity? Christianity, it's clear, that's not European behavior, that's not instinctually how they act, that they had to create something like Christianity. I don't know, what's the role of Christianity in for Europeans, does it serve any purpose to the European? They don't act like it, I think the only purpose it serves is to enslave other cultures.
Of course. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and also, don't forget the European worships written doctrines and written dogma. So, the good Christian is able to say, I go to church every Sunday and I get my my tithes or whatever the hell it's called. A good Christian is able to say, I pray for my enemies and I pray for everyone. That's what a so-called good Christian does. Never anything actual, like, tangible or anything just, I would say.
Definitely.
And then just on like the reverse side too, it's just a way to manipulate others to say like, hey, you are also like evil, you're also like this evil being when you're born. So you need this religion to make you like loving and all of these like virtuous things. But it's like naturally non-white people are like that, but then are manipulated by Europeans to act a different way to like go into circular motion, like, hey, we're going to teach you to act this way, and then you need this religion to teach you your regular ways. So it's definitely very manipulative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like this part from Ari Kwe Arma, like poem, and he says, "These are the makers of carrion. The wary one says, do not shelter them." And I think that's a message that I wish ancient African people would have heeded, because carrion means just like decaying flesh or something like that. Yeah. And they have decayed Black people's souls, minds, and potential to such a degree that we have to create endeavors like this just for Black people to even start reading. So it's just very tragic, and I wish no one has sheltered any so-called European. But yeah, any comments? All right, keep going.
Oh yeah, I really. Oh, go ahead. Were you gonna say something, Ezekiel?
I wasn't gonna comment, but I just wanted to read another part on 305. I posed a question.
It's okay. Then.
Go ahead.
You can go.
No, Ash, go ahead. Comment.
I lost my train of thought.
I apologize. All right. On 305, I want to pose a question after I read this. She says, but the vast majority of the world's people are still unable to absorb the fact of European group behavior. This raises, among other things, the question of whether those other cultures are able to prepare their members for the possibility of the sort of deceit and destructiveness of which the European is capable. So my question, she asked a question, but my question is mainly focused on the first part, which is, do you think the world's people are heading towards being able to absorb the fact of European group behavior? Are we able to absorb that?
Can you repeat the question?
My question is about, non-white people's ability to absorb the fact of European group behavior.
Wait, did you say absorb?
That's the word she used. Absorb the fact of European group behavior.
Okay.
Like, but what do you mean by it when you're asking your question?
Basically for me, I interpret that as, wanting to always see the good in the European, wanting to always, befriend them, think that they're friendly, think that they're like, this isn't them, this isn't the reality of them. They're, it goes back to the so-called, there's good white people, there's good cops, I think that stems from the fact that, we aren't able to absorb the fact of European group behavior. We still aren't. We're still struggling to. I wanted to hear everyone's comments and thoughts on that. A few people.
Yeah, I think that is like, you know, a very common reality of non-white people having to, like, you know, go find like the white savior, you know, that having to go find the one good white who can, like, you know, help them or convince them that the system isn't so bad, or that, like, you know, we don't live in a system full of racist suspects, and a system that is going to mistreat a lot of people of color to the death. So yeah, I think a lot of non-white people love avoiding this fact. They love, like, avoiding this fact and still, like, allowing the whites to come in and do whatever they want, and also trusting the whites, and, you know, following their whatever insane plans they have laid out for non-white people to participate in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I have to think about it, but I would say that it's something that is really, really important. And I don't think that we're even close to doing that. I mean, I think the discourse is a little bit better in that we're at least aware that, like, white people, you know, collectively, like, do things for the betterment of other white people. So I think,
I don't know. Ashley cut out.
Oh yeah, sorry, our Ethernet cord came out. Yeah, I was gonna say that I think that we're a little bit better in that we at least understand that white people do things to benefit their group, and that I at least I feel like that's like the base people understand. I don't know. I think sometimes people don't understand, like, an individual white person may not be out like harming you, but, you know, their greatest motivating factor is, like, you know, perpetuating or keeping the systems in place right now because they're benefiting them. Keeping white supremacy benefits them as a group. And so it's really important for people to understand that it's not about individual stuff. It's about what is the motivations of these groups. So yeah, I agree that it's something that we need to, when we talk about white supremacy and explain it to other people, we need to be more mindful about that too, because if you bring it onto, like, people will always try to use a diversion of talking about individual white people. Oh, this white person is this. Oh, Donald Trump is this. But it's like, it's about the group's motivating factors, you know?
Yeah, and I think I think I forgot what I was gonna say, but it'll come back to me because it was pretty pertinent. But you don't have anything to share, comment on?
Yeah, I got something I wanted to read on page. Well, first I want to answer Ezekiel's question, but my internet was on and off, so I don't really. If you don't mind repeating the question, Ezekiel.
I just wanted to, you know, comment a little bit too, just like that last part about deceit and destructiveness. I think I'm sorry, because I've read a little bit of chapter 6. I'm starting to understand, you know, what, like, how deceitful, you know, what deceit like truly is, you know, and understanding that, you know, I think that's important. You know, we need to understand, like, how, you know, they are deceiving us, and I think that'll go a long way in being able to absorb, you know, the fact of European group behavior.
Something from page 301.
One second, Trey. I wanted to say that white people have a mentality that they look out for themselves and also, like, the white supremacist interests, like, you know, the interests of white people, and black people are just trained to look out for themselves or nobody, it seems. But yeah, Trey, you can read.
Yeah, this is on page 301. All right. It says it is generated by an image of self and others the logic of which is that the existence of Africans and people of color helps to assure the constructive solidarity of Western Europeans. As long as they have non-white peoples to conquer, like having animals to kill, subjugate, enslave, colonize, and exploit, it will lessen the chances of their attempting to do so within the Western community. This is not to say that European. Oh yeah, that's all I went to spread read. But yeah, I highlighted that part because it's one of those examples of the just like great truth being dispelled. Basically, like the Europeans will never stop their oppression until like non-white people are like, you know, they've had enough and they're willing to work towards justice no matter what, or until all of us are no longer on planet Earth and then they can go back to you know, behaving cruelly to themselves. You know, I just thought that was a good little information dump that she had left us with.
I wanted to, I think, read, I don't know if Azika read this, but it's a really short one. On 305, it says, nationalism in Africa emerged as a purely defensive reflex. Narrow nationalism, xenophobia, exclusion of foreigners has never been a policy of African cultures. We always find it associated with Indo-European cultures. So I wanted to get your thoughts on like, what do you guys think the differences between white nationalism and like an African nationalism, and how do people like falsely equate the two, you know? And like, do you think that African nationalism is essential to like, you know, replacing white supremacy with justice?
I used to believe that well, I don't know what African nationalism is today, what that will look like. But I do know that like Africans as a whole were the first people to have a social democratic like voting party and voting system, and that when Africans were you know, traveling the world, they weren't taking from anyone, they were trading and teaching and you know, sharing knowledge, I guess, you know, and sharing justice with the world. European nationalism is white supremacy. It's the exaggerated, enlightened way of perceiving European society. You know, yeah. To me, white nationalism is just white supremacy. It's like I'm proud of where I'm from. I'm proud of my white skin, and like if you don't like it, that means you're inferior. You know, it's that simple. That's the best way I can answer that question.
Yeah, I wanted to answer the question. You know, I think African nationalism, in the sense, is kind of, you know, is like a modern construct. You know, white nationalism is, in a sense, mature. It's been around for a while. African nationalism, you know, is you know, African nationalism probably was created when colonialism ended. You know, like she said, as a defense. You know, we have to defend ourselves, and we have to, you know, constantly prove why we're, you know, worthy, why we have value now, because white nationalism creates, and that's all that they do is continue to state why they're valuable and why they're better than us. So we have to defend ourselves in order not to be killed, or, you know, not to, so our people, you know, maybe value us now. So that's my answer to the question. I think, you know, African nationalism compared to white nationalism is very, you know, immature, very, very young. White nationalism is old, mature, and you know, they have all these structures in place to just continually prove why, you know, why they're so great. You know, as these white nationalists continue to boast about, you know, these civilizations they've created. You go back to Africa now, and you know, they're still dealing with the end of colonialism and the destruction it caused. So they don't have much compared to, you know, European. They don't have much to boast about in their sense, in that sense.
Yeah, what's the question?
What do you think the difference? Well, look, I had to repeat the question first of all. What do you think the difference between white nationalism and an African nationalism is? And like, do you think African?
Oh yeah, so yeah, white nationalism is just white supremacy, and African nationalism is just the defense mechanism of like the tiny minority of non-white people, black people particularly, who are like, okay, white people are dangerous. We have to like understand this, and you just do something constructive about it. So that's how I would refer it to. It's just understanding that everything given by the European is poison. In the sense that it poisons the mind or the body or the spirit. So I feel like that's what African nationalism is aware of. I believe. Could be wrong though. So another part that I think is really important for me to read and comment on, even though I'll just read it from 305. What is the reaction of a European when he is greeted by one who offers trust and friendship? First of all, he regards such people as charmingly childlike, as puerile, really, because in this culture where such behavior is not valued, only very young children, not yet properly socialized, would behave in such a manner. Second, as Cook says, such behavior is an indication to a European that the people in question recognize their own inferiority. In other words, it is culturally impossible for him to view this automatic and natural trust of strangers as a positive value characteristic. In contradistinction to his Christian propaganda, he sees it instead merely as a sign of weakness and lack of self-esteem. The reaction is a key to the European Tamarojo and to European view of human nature. The xenophilia of Diop turns as Southern Credo civilization. Africa is exploited by the xenophobia of natural Credo civilization Europe. So yeah, like the system of racism and white supremacy functioning and with the non-whites being the children and the white people being the adults who with authority, it goes back a very very long time. And I didn't know it was I didn't know it was that far back. I didn't know like that, the kindness was transformed into, oh, you're a child and you think I'm a god because I'm a white, you know. So yeah, tragic. Um
Uh, um, I wanted to go read. I wanted to talk about image and value definitions. If nobody had anything to say on 306.
Oh yeah.
So I like reading this stuff. Sorry if I'm reading these long clips, but on 306, I wanted to read the second paragraph. I'll try not to read everything if it doesn't matter. But I highlighted the whole thing. Did anybody else have this highlighted? Or they want to read anything from it?
I have the Europeans are successful. I have that highlighted. But yeah, read as much as you want. Go for it.
All right. So I'm gonna start. The political implications of cultural imperialism became astoundingly clear. Functioning with someone else's definitions is dangerous to the self-image, the self-concept. Europeans are successful in their efforts to economically and politically control others because culturally they are able to force us to assimilate to their definitions of our inferiority into our own self-image, while at the same time gaining support for their image of themselves as superior. Again, the dialectic. As Amini says, the European definition of good functions destructively for the African and other non-European peoples who accept it. And it functions constructively for the European by projecting and reinforcing his own positive self-image and establishing a functional cultural norm, which has wide political, social, economic benefits. Terms such as master/slave, man/boy are initiated by the Europeans for their frame of reference and function to serve their purposes, in addition to those of the communities on which they are imposed. Here again, we see the value of the myth of universalism. For what enables Europeans to impose their definitions so successfully is, in part, their ability to convince their political objects that they are not European definitions and do not serve European interests, but that they are universally valid definitions, which serve the benefit of humankind. The myth of universalism is always the coup de grace in the pursuit of European cultural imperialism, and inevitably European definitions are translated into universalistic terms. So after reading all that, I wrote a little statement, and that statement says, it is unconstructive to agree with Europeans on anything, because I felt, that, they have their definitions of me and non-white people. So why would I agree with them on anything? Because all I'm doing is, fueling the image that they have of themselves. I wanted to get everyone's thoughts on that passage, if you care to comment.
Yeah, it's a really important part, because we often do many scholars talk about, racists talk about how we are trained to use their definitions that don't fit us and don't allow us to solve the problem. So you have to really be conscious and aware of how they're using definitions, and to make sure that your definition is also understood, so that if you are happen to be talking to a white person, you guys are able to have a constructive conversation, because no black person should ever walk away from having a conversation with a white person without having learned some new constructive information. Every white person should be attempting to give black people constructive information, to help produce justice. But in the system, they often give seat and further confusion, which is why it's up to black people to begin to understand words, because right now black people do not understand words, or at least not a critical mass of black people, so we can begin to solve this problem more effectively. So yeah, and I just remember using terms like the term assimilation should be frowned upon. I've used this term so much in high school and college. It's okay to assimilate. Assimilation is racism. No one should be subjected to the system of racism, white supremacy, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm really understanding, what universal is to people, and that nothing can be universal. Somebody is telling me to have I need to give my opinion from an objective stance. That doesn't make any sense. How can I give you an opinion from an objective stance? I can only give you what I've experienced in my perspective, which is subjective, right? So this. And the definition of what universal is to the European, has been stated, doesn't apply to us, doesn't apply to the non-white person. So, I'm really starting to understand, the importance of understanding that, just as, ISIS papers taught me the importance of understanding symbols.
Yeah.
And even the list on page 307 of the self-image and the image of others, and how they define each of the terms, who is critical, who's non-critical. I think it's very important to look at these, because even in nowadays, people use these terms all the time. Black people use these terms, non-white, everyone uses these terms of the irrational thought of others. Oh, people are lazy, and this and that, and all of these things. And it's just the only reason why you know to say those words is because the European has told you that. So it's very interesting, looking at these words, and then how everyone sees Europeans as the most critical, the most logical, the most educated, the most this, the most that, and it's just no, you know. But time and time again, it's just like we perpetuate it and say like, yes, you are the most knowledgeable of all things. But in reality, they have no knowledge because they've taken it from everyone else. Like your knowledge is defined on non-white people and the backs of non-white people. You know, you come to our land and we teach you how to do your crops. We teach you how to do all these things. So what do you really know other than stealing and killing? So very interesting.
Yeah. I think that's a good point for me to read this part on 307. It says the ego requires that the person views himself, herself in opposition to other persons. It requires a ceaseless pursuit of power for its emotional satisfaction. So, we understand like the European is silly, like constant thirst for power and to mistreat people on basis of color. And they have the audacity to call the non-white Black people, emotional people when they have a whole system to satisfy their diabolical emotions. So it's really like, telling to understand the system and understand like the words white people use and what things mean. So we're able to put together like, all right, system is put together scientifically, so we have to use, science and logic to take it down.
Yeah, this comes from that competitive mindset and this dichotomous thinking. It's just like, well, there's only two ways of thinking. It's either you're in or you're out. So if I'm critical, that means everyone else is non-critical. If I'm this, that means everyone else is this. And it kind of goes on to the page of 308, but not to get there too fast. It's like this binary thinking of polar opposites, but it's like that doesn't exist. Like that's not a way of thinking.
I also find it, but I'm going through this list of others are irrational, and I'm just like, this all defines like European behavior, every single one of it. So it's like a projection, like they're imitative, they're passive, lazy, childlike, backward, illogical, uncivilized. This is them. That's European behavior to a T. Very, very funny. It's interesting.
Yeah. Do you guys want to? I don't have any other notes. My last note was the ego bit. So if you guys want to talk about 305, and maybe you guys will all write some comments at me, but from 305. I mean, my bad, 308.
If nobody has anything else to say, go ahead.
Go Ezekiel.
I was just gonna say I'm down for closing comments if nobody has anything else to say.
Oh yeah, let's do some. Yeah, no, let's start. I'm down for closing comments too.
Okay, so my closing comment is there's no way to connect with Europeans on any relational level because there's no way to think dichotomous in a binary way of thinking, and it doesn't exist. There's no culture. There's no European culture.
For my closing comment, European behavior, living, cultural thought, everything that comes with the European civilization needs to be thrown away. I don't want any parts of it. It's just a toxic. This is a toxic, relationship, tragic relationship. Yeah. Yeah. I truly and fully understand now how the European views, other cultures and other people. I'm gonna popcorn a Trey, if he's still there.
All right, I don't think Trey is there, but I'll give my closing comments. Like the European, like truly believe and will continue to dominate the world as they believe it is their right. Yeah, they think they are the organizers of the planet. They think they are establishing peace. Hence the you need, what's that? The Peace, United Peace Corps or whatever. United Nations Peace Corps. You know that the rapists of the world, pillagers. You know, like I don't. Yeah, it's not in their ability to seek justice. That's why it's up to the first peoples of the planet, Black people, as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing says. It's up to us to lead by example, or to cause the white supremacists to really show their true nature to all the Black people who aren't understanding the system and how to counter it, and understanding that that's your assignment on planet Earth, to solve this problem. That's why that's why I'm here, to help solve this problem. So I understand how the European sees me, and how most people who classify as white will see me, but just a lot, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that as well. My closing comments. This chapter has given me so much data and information for me to utilize while using in my struggle to bring justice to this planet. So like the next time I have to write a paper for my Western school, I'll definitely be on page 298 and 299, quoting the founders of Western civilization. Well, not the founders, the people that they listen to, that they worship. The gods of Western civilization.
Oh, sad. All right, I believe I think it's just Ash.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this chapter, or this section of the chapter. I agree too with Trey. I feel like I have a whole so-called arsenal of quotations and data that I can keep in my brain computer, and I don't have to spit them out at European people. I can just know that that is in my mind when they're speaking, and be able to analyze and decode what they're saying accordingly. And I'm just enjoying this book. I'm really excited for the next chapter. So yeah, those are my closing thoughts.
All right, thank you everyone for participating. I'll see you next week.